So our next presenter is Dr. Janice Keefe, a parishioner at Holy Trinity Pastoral Unit. Almost said Holy Family Parish. And she's going to talk to us about our next building block on witness. And I give it over to her. I ask you to please give her a warm welcome and make her feel very, very comfortable up here. Please welcome Dr. Janice.
Thanks very much, John. It's a real pleasure to be here. Although, as many of you know, I'm actually quite petrified. I know most of you don't know me, and those who do know me are probably a little surprised that I'm actually here. Me too. Believe me when I say speaking to a group like this is not uncommon, but it's usually at an aging conference, and you all look so young. You're going to like me, right? No, seriously, I've never had this many priests in my midst in my whole entire life. So it's all good. Certainly, this does remind me of something, though. When I was, a few years ago, I was on a business trip, and I'm often on a business trip speaking on my research. I do research on aging and caregiving. I was in Winnipeg, and while I was there, a Globe and Mail reporter wanted to speak to me about the future needs of the elderly in Canada, and that's kind of something I do. So no big deal, except I have to leave my workshop, and I'm on the phone with him for like 30 minutes. It seems like hours. And finally, I'm getting a little frustrated. You know, those of you who have done media interviews, they want something, right? And you can't figure out what is it they want. Just let me go. I have to get back to my meeting. So I said, look, if the government thinks that adult children are going to be living next door to their elderly parents, it just ain't going to happen, says Dr. Janice Keefe, Canada Research Chair in Aging, in the Globe. I thought I might be fired from the Mount, but they kept me on. I have tenure, thank God for tenure. So go ahead, 24 hours. I'm back being a mom again, and I'm taking my son Liam to hockey practice. And on the way home, I remembered Saturday, I'm in the Globe today. Oh yeah, I gotta get the Globe. Liam, do you mind if we go to the superstore? I need to pick up the paper. Mommy's gonna be in the paper today. And he's like, oh, sure, Mommy. Actually, I'm gonna be in the paper too. And I think to myself, my God, isn't that sweet? He wants to be just like his mom. And I said, you know, dear, that's okay. Like, you will be in the paper someday. I know that for sure. You're going to be very successful. He said, seriously, Mom? There was an interviewer at our school, and Daddy said they could interview me on bullying. I said, okay. So I bought both the Globe Mail and the Chronicle Herald, and true enough, the same day I'm in the Globe, my son is in the Chronicle Herald talking about bullying. So at the same time that I said it ain't gonna happen, my son was interviewed by the Chronicle Herald reporter, and their question was, someone's on the playground and they were being bullied. What would you do? Would you stand up for them? And he paused. He wasn't all that big. There he is there. He's very sweet at that time. He's now 17 almost. And he said, I hope so. Anything is possible. And that's pretty much how I feel at this moment. The fact I'm standing up here, anything is possible. And with our church, I really do see it as a metaphor for our church at this juncture, because we can secretly be frustrated, demoralized, and say, it ain't gonna happen. Or we could have that innocence of a child in the face of adversity and say, anything is possible. So I've been asked to talk to you about evangelization and witnessing. So as a faith academic, I started looking up all different types of definitions and interpretations of witness and evangelization. It's a bit daunting because yet another blow to my ego. I don't have any degrees in theology. I am not an expert in this stuff. In fact, I just know what I experience. And I do know this, that evangelization is nothing more than inviting others into a joyful, vibrant, personal relationship with Jesus, live fully in the church. And I love this image from Pope Francis that talks about the experience that we have, that it can't remain locked up in our life or in our small groups, in our parishes, in our movements, or in our own community. It'd be like withholding oxygen from a flame that's burning strongly. And that's what's important to me in evangelization. So it's really about being the fifth gospel, about living out our lives in a way that supports and teaches and enacts Jesus' message. And how is it do we convey that to others in the middle of this society, this very secular society, to be that witness to Jesus Christ? So if witness is telling the story, what is my story? Well, I don't have hours, but I will tell you, I'm a woman, obviously. I became a widow when I was 44. While I was away, I was chairing an international conference in Toronto. My husband died of a heart attack very suddenly. I am also a single mom to, at that time, a 10-year-old who found his father, had to try and revive him, and who over the past 5 years have had some challenges following the loss of his best friend, his dad. His dad was more of a stay-at-home dad, and I was the outgoing mom. I'm also a grieving sibling for my beautiful sister who took care of me and my son after my husband died. And yet God called her not that long ago after a very short illness, whose mom died a couple of months ago when I was in France. I'm always away. And so like many of you, I actually get the loss thing. I get the darkness. I've had some bitterness, for sure. But I love this picture because this is a scripture that talks about that new heart that I will give you and a new spirit that I will put within you. And I will remove from your body the heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And that's how I felt. So many of us yearn for something more, for peace, for spiritual well-being, for enlightenment. I was one of those who was looking. TBH, to be honest, I really didn't think I'd find it in my Catholic faith. I'm honestly surprised, happily surprised. But when you peel away all of the stuff and you begin again at that core of our faith, something happened. I started spending time in prayer, developing this relationship with Jesus, praying, reading, writing, reaching out to others who were less fortunate than me. And you know what? Things changed. I actually changed. Everything else probably did remain the same, but I changed. I began to see that the Mass, the sacraments, prayer, oh my gosh, all of the stuff that I had been going to week after week after week after week for 44 years, it just took on a whole new meaning for me. And I'm really learning to take all my cares and all my anxieties and lay them at God's feet. I'm learning to let go. I'm learning to place my trust in God. And I'm learning, and this is hard, to fold those wings of intellect that I have had. Just to stop trying to control everything and just to be with God, to be in God's presence. And I know that really I am nothing in front of God, and yet I'm actually everything to him. And God has given me this new heart and a new spirit and remove that heart of the stone. So I'm learning to try not to be afraid. Obviously, I'm standing in front of you. I'm learning not to be afraid to love until it hurts, because that's how Jesus loved, and that's from Blessed Mother Teresa. And I'm trying, and God knows I stumble a lot, I'm trying to act with justice, to love tenderly, and walk humbly with my God. But along that path and journey, we need to be able to reach out to others. And it's not just about my relationship with God, it's about other relationships. And so maybe it's sharing with others God's grace, the gift that Jesus' mercy has been for us, or maybe it's just being there at their time of darkness. And part of this, I think, is really knowing what your particular gifts are. And Sister Noella talked about that in terms of our charisms. And many of you that we've chatted have gone through these gifts inventory. And it's important, I think, to understand, to reach out to others. So here's some of the gifts. And, you know, this is from Catherine of Siena gift inventory that I've done with Father Jamie. But there are many other programs. If I think about myself and I look at who I am as an academic, I've been in an ivory tower for over 20 years. My gifts maybe are writing and some type of analytical thinking, although clearly there's some of you that might question that now. But one thing I know that's to be true, despite all my trials and tribulations, I love to have people in my midst. Not necessarily you guys, but usually I like people. No, I love you. That's great. Of course, I should have had 9 children like my mother did. I come from a big family. There we are. And she's surrounded by her children, her 9 children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. She's in the middle there. I'm over here beside her. And there's about 40 of us there. So we have a great hockey game. And you can see a lot of us are Montreal Canadian fans. Now, I told you I have 1 son, and I'm a widow. So there's 2 of us. So it's a little quiet in my house. So that, bring on, you know, a gift of hospitality, bring on the joy of fellowship, preparing and serving meals, enjoying a glass of wine, 2 glasses of wine, enjoying the conversation, the fellowship, the relationships that we build as we break bread together. I'm so blessed that I can speak with others in my own parish about my faith. But it's not enough. We can talk in secret over dinner with like-minded people, but where does that get us? Insular, self-supporting, and God forbid, a false sense of righteousness. So in my parish, we developed the E-team, or the evangelization team. Okay, it freaked me out to be called this at first, okay? I want you to know I'm on a journey. But we began by meeting in our homes to talk about how we could support our parish, to be more inviting, to develop adult formation classes, to read books about our faith, Rediscovering Catholicism, 4 Signs of a Dynamic Catholic, the Catholic Disciple Rebuilt, and so on and so on. Put on courses, adult formation courses. But it's not enough. We had to pray. We had to regroup at church and spend time together in adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. What were we doing? What were each of us called to do? And how can we be the witnesses that Christ desired for us? Not just talking about what we know, but what we have witnessed. To be able to speak the truth of our experiences and to continue to engage in that experiential learning in actual action. So as Pope John Paul II said, witness is proposing Jesus Christ in word and deed. Holiness and mission are 2 sides of the same coin. So we can hide in the darkness, but we do need to come out to the light. We need to get out of our comfort zone, like I am today, to bring Christ to others through our action. We all need to talk to each other, and I think Father Rob had talked about this. God speaks to us a little differently, hoping upon hope that we'll share it with each other, that we'll have those honest conversations, and we'll have space and time for those. I love this picture. Please come up. It says, no, we don't have Wi-Fi. Talk to each other. What a concept. But this conversion of others can only be partially from us. This witnessing is only part of what we can do. We really must realize that the conversion to Christ can only come from grace. We do what we do through witnessing, then we need to get the hell out of the way and let the Spirit take over. Because we can't do it ourselves. We're only able to provide some of our own experiences. I think that's really important. And this is very hard to see, but I love the picture of the fire, and the quote says, "What makes a fire burn is the space between the logs. Too much of a good thing, too many logs packed in too tight can douse the flames almost as surely as a pail of water." And certainly one of the strangest things that happened to me along this path was hearing words from a fellow parishioner. I was at one of these discovery meetings, and I went to church last night and took a picture of this because it's on the wall on the way in. There's a whole bunch of these little testimonies. And this fellow participant told us of how meaningful it was to hear about my image of Jesus holding me in my times of darkness and despair, wrapping me in his love, how it changed the way she thought of Jesus. That just blew me away. For me, it was a powerful, powerful gift to receive, to have her say that to me. Me, the critical, sarcastic, intellect academic, became a vehicle through which God's love reached somebody else. That was cool. Very cool. And so just to kind of sum up, how do we do this? We're all in search of peace. The Lord's wanting to provide it to us, but we need to meet him partway. He'll not force it on us, on our families, or on our friends. We need to take responsibility, though, as a member of our Catholic faith, to reach out to others, whether that's in word, through email, through blogging, but it's action. It could be action of doing and helping others, generosity kinds of activities. And I think these are just some of the ways that I saw, and I invoked it around this image of joy, because to me, I believe that the joy of the Lord is my strength. And I think being able to reach out through prayer, through hospitality, through welcoming, through listening and actively listening to people is what we need to do as part of the methods of bringing out witness in our world. So being joyful, smiling, talking about our experiences, rekindling who we are as a Catholic people. And so I want to end with Pope Francis again, because I think the experience of this encounter, these 3 days, must not remain locked up in your life or in the small group in your parish or your movement or your small community, because that really would be like withholding oxygen from a flame that was burning strongly. And let's face it, we could truly use a raging fire at this moment in our history.